anyone of us when he is riding a car and wants to go to a certain place, he can usually reach that place with ease, even if this place is new to him, and this is because movement on the roads is not complicated. The roads are paved and clear, there are signs and arrows everywhere, and if you are stuck at all and do not know where you are, whoever asks will not get lost. But this is talking about the situation on the ground. In the air, the situation is different. The clouds surround you from everywhere and the whole sky is similar to each other, and there are no roads, no lights, and no signs to tell you where you are going and where you are coming from. You will not find someone above you to stop him and tell him, "Excuse me, I'm not from here. How can I go there?" This in turn raises a very important question: how do pilots know the way even though the whole sky is similar? Welcome, but before we begin, if you are new to the channel, do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell to receive our videos first. With the beginning of the 20th century, after a very long journey of human attempts to invent a means that would enable them to fly, from Abbas ibn Firnas to the Wright brothers, a successful model of an airplane was finally made in December 1903. After that, airplanes became an essential part of people's lives, but of course, airplanes at that time were very primitive. That's why in the first models of airplanes, the pilots traveled only during the day because they relied mainly on their eyes to determine directions. What helped them do this was that the airplanes did not originally fly at high altitudes, so the pilot could see everything below him clearly, whether buildings, rivers, lakes, or other things. This way, he could orient himself properly. With the development of the airplane industry and the fact that it became possible to fly at much higher altitudes, the pilots began to use tools that would help them see from afar better, such as binoculars or the deviation indicator. This was a telescope, but its lens had specific lines. That current helps determine the wind speed and direction and corrects the course, in addition to, of course, seeing the landmarks of the road below it clearly regardless of the altitude. However, with the beginning of the 30s, the air navigation area began to expand and pilots were forced to fly in places where there were no clear landmarks or distinctive signs, such as vast desert areas or mountainous areas. Therefore, airlines invented a very strange idea, which is to draw huge arrows made of concrete in different places, arrows whose length exceeded tens of meters and were painted yellow so the pilot could see them easily from the air. Each group of arrows led to a lighthouse or control tower in a specific area. At the time, very large numbers were made that connected between East and West America. By the way, these large arrows still exist to this day in many places, and you can see them on Google Maps. To this day, all the methods we talked about depend on direct vision with the eye, meaning, and they also depend on unclear landmarks on the ground that we can rely on, so it is not as strong as someone walking on the ground in a car, but of course the situation will change. The pilots will need to travel in many areas that do not have arrows or any landmarks, and they will also feel above the vast seas and oceans. Not only that, they will also need to travel at night and the world is dark. And it will help much more than before, to the point that they will literally be above the clouds. Therefore, we had to find a way to draw the path for them while they are in the air without relying on direct vision. One of the most important means that the pilots resorted to in order to solve this problem is the sextant, which is a device in the shape of a circle. Sailors used it in the past to determine their location compared to the position of the North Star at night or the position of the sun during the day. It was developed by the Portuguese pilot Diogo Coutinho in 1922 to suit air navigation, and pilots can use it to determine their location in relation to the lines of longitude. The display, and besides the sixth, they also used mathematical methods to determine their location, such as inferential estimation or dead reckoning, which depended on the time and speed that the plane traveled during its flight, but of course, all of these methods were difficult and complex, in addition to the fact that they were not as accurate as required. Here, this was the ideal time for radio waves to enter the field of aviation in order to show U.S. air navigation technology in its current form. The first important step in the development of air navigation was the emergence of stations known as ACOK range stations, which were huge ground towers up to 40 meters long, built in a square shape that included 4 towers. Each tower sent an encrypted signal in a specific direction that traveled in the air, until the pilot received it in his plane in the form of an audio broadcast. Every time this broadcast changed in a specific pattern, the plane immediately understood whether it was going right or wrong. The sound wave system of the ACOK towers was a very good system, but there was a major problem, which was that the frequencies they were using were low and, therefore, could be disturbed for any reason. That is why in the 50s and 60s, this system was replaced by a better system, which is the VOR system, which is an abbreviation for the Very High Frequency Omnidirectional Range Station. The advantage of this system was the strength of its signal in the short range. What also distinguished it from any system before it was the way it worked, which is done by the ground station sending to signals, one fixed, and the other rotating 360 degrees starting from 0 to 360. This means that the plane that had the VOR receiver in it never lost the signal, and the station kept monitoring all the time. Thus, the current was able to determine its exact location in relation to the station, and based on that it could determine its directions without fearing that the signal would be lost. That is why the VOR system gained great popularity, and pilots continued to work with it for years long, and some planes to this day have this system as a backup system for safety. And this takes us to the final stage of air navigation technology, which is satellites and GPS. The Global Positioning System, known in short as GPS, is a system that was developed for the first time in the 70s of the last century and was not used in civilian aircraft until the mid-90s, approximately in 1995. At that time, this system was integrated with aircraft in an ingenious way that makes the pilot not exert any effort in flying the aircraft himself. The aircraft is the one that flies itself on the required path, completely automatically, which is automatic piloting. In the end, the pilot now is not the one who drives the aircraft throughout the flight, as some people believe. He does not keep holding the aircraft steering wheel and going right and left and swerving with it. All that happens is that before the aircraft takes off, there is a man in the operations center on the ground called the flight dispatcher or air dispatcher, who is metaphorically called the ground pilot. Is not even on the plane, he is in the ground operations center, and he is the one who draws the course that the plane will follow based on the data and information he has, and he directs the plane and the altitude at which it will fly, and all this information is put into the plane's computer, and using the GPS system, the plane begins to move in this path completely automatically without any intervention from the pilot, and this is what is known as the autopilot system, or God means that the current does not blow into the plane. In fact, the current in the cockpit, its only role is to monitor the automatic current and follow the data in front of it first hand to make sure that the automatic pilot is working properly all the time and at the same time it must. Be prepared for any intervention in the event of road conditions or technical malfunctions. In this case, the current intervenes and turns off the autopilot system and he begins to fly the plane himself. In addition, if the ground controller contacts the pilot and tells him that there is a storm coming, for example, or there are difficult weather conditions at that time, the current also turns off the autopilot system and starts to deviate from the path that is problems. Of course, during takeoff and landing, the pilot is the one who does both. That's why pilots compete with each other on who can take off and land the plane better than the other so that the passengers don't feel any shocks and the flight remains completely smooth for them. This particular process is what distinguishes the professional current from the amateur current. Thus, the actual answer to the question is not how the current knows the way even though the sky is similar. The question is when will the pilot need to drive while he is in the sky? That's it. Who got this far? All that got him is you, the best people. Like us before you go out so we can know how many of us got there. Don't forget that if you have a question in
night that confuses you, write it to us in the comments below the video so we can answer it. Bye.